I'm Cliff Barrickman, and I am in Kokkinok, Alaska, on the shores of Lake Iliamna, Alaska's largest lake. In some places, this lake is over 1,000 feet deep. There's no telling what could be swimming around in the bottom of this lake.
Lake Iliamna does not look like a monster story from the air. It looks cold, endless, and empty. A sheet of Alaskan water so wide the opposite shore disappears into weather. But beneath that silence is a stranger truth. Scientists have not proven a dinosaur, a serpent, or a nightmare. They have proven the lake can hide something even more unsettling, real animals where they should not be. The witnesses who couldn't explain what they saw. The sightings are what kept the Iliamna mystery alive. Pilots reported shapes moving below the surface. Fishermen described huge bodies in the water. Some witnesses claimed the animals moved in groups. Others described dark forms rolling just beneath the lake, large enough to make experienced outdoorsmen question what they were looking at. One of the most repeated stories comes from the 1940s, when observers from the air reportedly saw multiple large shapes swimming below them. That detail matters because pilots in rural Alaska are trained by necessity. They spend their lives reading land, water, weather, ice, and distance. Misjudging what is below can get a person killed. Then came later accounts, including pilot Tim Laporte, who remembered seeing strange large shapes in the lake in the 1970s. There were also reports from groups of witnesses, shoreline observers, and people who claimed the movement did not resemble ordinary fish, logs, waves, or seals. The problem is that none of those sightings became proof. That is the frustrating thing about lake monsters. A witness can be honest and still mistaken. A person can see something real and describe it incorrectly. Cold water, glare, distance, waves, fear, expectation, and scale can all distort what the eye thinks it knows. But the Iliamna case survived because the reports kept landing in the same general territory. Large, dark, fast, sometimes grouped, often seen from above, often difficult to compare with known animals. By 1980, the mystery had become famous enough that the Anchorage Daily News offered a $100,000 reward for tangible evidence and scientific verification of an unknown creature living in the lake. That should have ended the story. Money brings cameras, money brings boats. Money brings people willing to freeze, search, and embarrass themselves if there is even a chance of proving the impossible. But the reward was never claimed. No body, no clean photograph, no specimen, no final answer. Skeptics took that as proof there was nothing there. Believers took it as proof the lake was too large and too wild to surrender its secret. But the most interesting answer sits between those extremes. Maybe people were seeing something real, just not the monster they imagined. The lake too big for a simple legend. Lake Iliamna is the kind of place that makes legends feel practical. It is not a small forest pond where one strange ripple becomes a monster by sunset. It is the largest freshwater lake in Alaska, stretching around 77 miles long and more than 20 miles wide. In places, it drops close to 1,000 feet. That means there are areas of cold, dark water where almost nobody has ever looked closely, not with human eyes, not with cameras, and not with enough time to say the case is closed. That size matters. Most lake monster stories collapse when the lake is too small, too shallow, or too heavily studied. A breeding population of large animals needs space. It needs food. It needs somewhere to hide, somewhere to move, and somewhere to avoid people. Lake Iliamna has all of that. The water is remote. The villages are few. There are no highways running neatly around it. Much of the area is reached by aircraft or boat. Weather can change fast. Cold water can kill quickly. The lake is connected westward toward Bristol Bay through the Kvichak River system, but it still feels sealed away, sitting deep inside one of North America's last great wilderness regions. That is why people around the lake never needed to exaggerate its danger. The place itself is dangerous enough. For generations, local stories warned about something large in the water. Different versions describe a huge black fish, a long shape, a shark-like body, or something powerful enough to strike boats from below. Outsiders heard those stories and did what outsiders often do. They treated them like superstition. But folklore in places like this is rarely random. It is usually a memory system. a way of turning loss, caution, and observation into rules people can remember. Don't go there when the water looks wrong. Don't paddle closer when something moves against the wind. Don't assume the lake is empty just because the surface looks calm. That does not mean every story is literally true, but it does mean the warnings came from people who had to survive beside the lake, not from tourists looking for a thrill. And that is where Lake Iliamna becomes different from most monster stories. The legend did not begin as entertainment. It began as caution. Then, decade after decade, outsiders started seeing things, too. The science that changed the question. For years, people asked the wrong question. They asked, is there a monster in Lake Iliamna? That question forces the answer into fantasy. Either there is a giant unknown creature or the whole thing is nonsense. But science works better when the question becomes sharper. What large animals actually live there? What could be mistaken for a monster? What could survive in a cold freshwater lake this large? What biological surprise has already been proven? That last question is the key, because Lake Iliamna is home to harbor seals. Not just a seal wandering inland once in a while. A small, unusual population of harbor seals has been documented using the lake consistently. These seals live in fresh water, far from the normal coastal places where most people expect to find marine mammals. That is already extraordinary. A lake monster story asks you to believe an animal is living where it should not be. Lake Iliamna's seals prove that part of the premise is not absurd. The lake really can support large aquatic mammals in an environment where outsiders might not expect them. That does not mean the monster is definitely a seal. It means the lake is biologically stranger than the average skeptic admits. Imagine being a pilot flying over cold, dark water. You look down and see several large gray bodies moving together beneath the surface. They rise, turn, vanish, and reappear in low light. From altitude, with no scale except your aircraft and the shoreline, a group of seals could look far larger or stranger than expected. Now imagine a fisherman seeing a dark animal roll in the water from a boat. If he is not expecting seals in a freshwater lake, his mind searches for another explanation. Fish, shark, monster. That is how legends grow around real animals. The animal does not have to be imaginary. It only has to appear in the wrong place. And Lake Iliamna's seals appear in the wrong place strongly enough that scientists have studied whether they are distinct from other harbor seals. That is not folklore. That is biology. The real proof is not that a nightmare creature has been caught. The proof is that Iliamna can hide a population the outside world barely understood for generations. The shark theory that won't die. Still, seals do not explain everything. Some witnesses did not describe seal-like animals. They described something longer, darker, more fish-like, almost shark-shaped. That has led to one of the most persistent natural theories: Pacific sleeper sharks. Sleeper sharks are real. They live in cold northern waters. They can grow very large. They are slow-moving but powerful predators, capable of feeding on fish and marine mammals. Their name makes them sound lazy, but research has shown they are more active and formidable than people once assumed. On paper, the theory has appeal. A huge dark shark in cold northern water would explain many sightings better than a mythical serpent. It could look strange from above. It could move below boats. It could damage fishing gear. It could inspire fear without requiring a prehistoric monster. But there is one major problem. There is no confirmed Pacific sleeper shark specimen from Lake Iliamna. That matters. A theory can be plausible and still unproven. To make the sleeper shark explanation work, you need a route into the lake, enough animals to sustain sightings, a food source, and proof that at least some individuals can survive in fresh water long enough to matter. The lake's connection through the Kvichak River makes movement from the broader Bristol Bay system imaginable in a general sense. But possible is not the same as proven. Sharks are not ghosts. If they are present in a lake, generation after generation, scientists would eventually expect some trace: a carcass, a confirmed capture, DNA, tagging evidence, or unmistakable footage. So the sleeper shark theory sits in the same strange middle zone as the monster itself. It explains too much to ignore. It proves too little to settle anything. That is why the story remains alive. The best natural explanation still leaves gaps. The seal explanation is real, but not complete. The shark explanation is dramatic, but not confirmed. The witness reports are compelling, but not conclusive. The lake is huge, deep, remote, and difficult to search. This is not proof of a monster, but it is exactly the kind of environment where uncertainty survives. Why the unknown DNA claim is so dangerous. Recently, some versions of the Iliamna story have claimed scientists finally found unknown environmental DNA in the lake. That sounds like the perfect ending. No blurry photograph, no questionable witness sketch, no campfire legend. Just water samples, lab testing, and DNA sequences that do not match any known animal. The monster finally pulled out of folklore and into science. But that claim needs extreme caution. Environmental DNA, or eDNA, is real science. Researchers collect water, soil, or air samples and analyze the tiny genetic traces left behind by organisms. It can reveal fish, amphibians, mammals, and microbes without ever seeing the animal directly. But eDNA is also easy to misunderstand. A result can be affected by contamination, incomplete databases, degraded fragments, or poor interpretation. Unknown does not automatically mean new monster. It can mean the reference database does not have the right match. It can mean the sequence is too damaged. It can mean the sample picked up something unexpected but ordinary. That is why public, peer-reviewed confirmation matters. At the moment, there is no widely accepted public scientific proof that Lake Iliamna contains an unknown monster based on eDNA. The viral version makes the story cleaner than the science allows. But here is the twist. The unverified DNA claim is not needed to make the case interesting. Lake Iliamna already has a proven biological mystery. A freshwater seal population in a remote inland lake, surrounded by decades of sightings of large animals that people could not explain. The real story is not that science confirmed a monster. The real story is that science confirmed the lake is capable of producing monster-like confusion. That is more believable, and in some ways more unsettling. Because if the scariest stories are built around real animals, then dismissing every legend as nonsense becomes a mistake. The lake may not be hiding one impossible creature. It may be hiding a chain of real biological surprises that people have been describing badly for centuries. The population worse than one monster. The word that changes everything is population. One monster is almost impossible. A single giant animal living for decades without a mate, without a breeding group, without leaving remains, and without being clearly photographed is the stuff of fantasy. But a population is different. A population does not have to be one immortal beast. It can be smaller, more ordinary, and much harder to detect if the animals are shy, deep diving, and spread across a huge lake. And scientists have already proven at least one strange population exists there. The seals. That is what makes Lake Iliamna worse than a normal monster story. The legend may not point to one creature. It may point to a whole ecosystem outsiders underestimated. A lake large enough to hold freshwater seals. A lake connected enough to the sea to raise questions. A lake deep enough to hide large shapes. A lake remote enough that many reports never become formal data. If witnesses saw seals, then the monster is not fake. It is misidentified truth. If witnesses saw giant fish, then the lake still holds something science has not documented clearly enough. If witnesses saw sleeper sharks, then the case becomes one of the strangest freshwater predator stories in North America. And if the sightings are a mixture, seals in some cases, waves and logs in others, fish in others, and maybe one rare visitor nobody has confirmed yet, then the monster is not one animal at all. It is the lake's ability to turn reality into legend. That is the new storyline. Ili may not be a creature. Ili may be a category, a name people gave to every large, dark, dangerous thing the lake refused to explain. That sounds less dramatic at first, but think about what it means. The legend survived because the lake kept producing moments that felt impossible. Not once, not in one decade, across generations. A seal where no seal should be. A shape too large to identify. A wake with no boat. A shadow moving under an aircraft. A net damaged beyond easy explanation.
Well, there's been a lot of stories from people around these parts.
A predator theory that fits until it doesn't. Lake Iliamna does not need one monster to be terrifying. It only needs enough truth to keep doubt alive. The lake is changing. There is another reason this story matters now. Alaska is changing fast. Warming temperatures, shifting ice, altered fish runs, changing water conditions, and pressure from development all affect remote ecosystems. Lake Iliamna is not a museum. It is a living system connected to Bristol Bay, salmon, seals, local communities, and the broader climate of the North. That means whatever lives in the lake is not frozen in place. If seals depend on specific haul-out sites, fish movements, ice conditions, or access through the river system, changes in the lake could affect them. If large fish or unusual predators use certain depths or temperature layers, warming could change where they move. If human activity increases, sightings may increase too, not because monsters are multiplying, but because animals and people are being pushed into the same spaces more often. This is where the title becomes darker. Worse than anyone imagined does not have to mean a giant creature is waiting to attack boats. It can mean the real mystery is fragile. For decades, people argued over whether Lake Iliamna's monster was real, while one of the rarest freshwater seal populations on Earth was living in the same water. That is the irony. The search for a monster may have distracted people from the confirmed animals that actually need attention. A legend asks, what if something unknown is down there? Science answers, something remarkable is already down there. The tragedy would be ignoring the real discovery because it is not monstrous enough. That is the responsibility of telling a story like this. You can keep the suspense. You can respect the witnesses. You can admit the lake still has unanswered questions, but you also have to separate evidence from excitement. The confirmed mystery deserves just as much wonder as the unconfirmed one, because a freshwater seal population in a huge, isolated Alaskan lake is not boring. It is the kind of fact that would sound invented if science had not studied it. And that may be the best explanation for why Iliamna's legend refuses to die. The lake has always been stranger than outsiders expected. What scientists have actually proven? So have scientists finally proven Alaska's lake monster? No scientist has publicly displayed a captured unknown creature from Lake Iliamna. No accepted study has confirmed monster DNA. No photograph has ended the argument. No carcass has washed ashore and forced textbooks to change overnight. But scientists have proven something that changes the entire meaning of the legend. They proved the lake is not ordinary. They proved large marine mammals can live there. They proved Iliamna's freshwater seals are real, unusual, and worthy of serious study. They proved local knowledge about strange animals in the lake should never have been dismissed as childish superstition. They proved the lake is big enough, cold enough, remote enough, and biologically rich enough to keep secrets far longer than most people would believe. It has moved from, is there a serpent, to what real animals have people been seeing? It has moved from folklore to ecology, from campfire fear to scientific curiosity, from one impossible beast to an entire lake system that still has gaps in our understanding. And those gaps matter. Because human beings often make the same mistake. We assume that if something has not been proven, it must not exist. But history is full of animals that were known to local people long before formal science accepted them. That does not mean every cryptid is real. It means local observation deserves respect, and skepticism should not become arrogance. Lake Iliamna sits exactly in that uncomfortable middle. Too many reports to ignore. Too little proof to confirm the monster. Enough real biology to keep the question open. That is why the lake remains fascinating. The answer may not be a nightmare creature hiding in the depths. It may be stranger. A remote Alaskan lake where seals became freshwater residents, where giant shapes are still reported, where the best explanations all leave something behind, and where the line between legend and ecology stays cold, dark, and unfinished. So the next time someone says Alaska's lake monster has been proven, the honest response is this: not the monster, the possibility. Lake Iliamna has proven that reality can be weird enough to start legends by itself. Scientists have not dragged a monster from Lake Iliamna, but they have proven the lake is stranger than skeptics thought. Huge, remote, full of rare freshwater seals, and still not fully explained. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment what you think Ili really is: seal, shark, giant fish, or something else entirely.